Hi, I'm Nathan Shively-Sanders, and this is the Definitely Typed Omnibus. It's sort of a short four-part series on various definitely typed topics. Only the first is likely to be interesting to a general audience. The other three are sort of aimed at the definitely typed maintenance team, which is the TypeScript team. But the first one, I'm going to talk about the sort of background of definitely typed. Although if you're still interested in the full history, I'd actually recommend John Riley's Definitely Typed the Movie, which, contra the name, is actually a blog post, so you'll have to do some reading for that. But it's a really good in-depth story of how Definitely Typed got to where it is up till about 2016 or 17, and things have continued up till about 2023, the last half, more or less the same way. So let's talk about the theory and a little bit of the history of Definitely Typed. Why does it exist? So to talk about that, we need to figure out what are DTS files really? And in a TypeScript-centric world, one where TypeScript is the only thing that anybody ever writes, JS and DTS files are both output. You have JS for running things, and you have DTS for metadata. So if somebody shows up with a package, at compile time, you'll use the DTS metadata to interface with that package, and then you'll actually, of course, run the JS at runtime. You don't ever actually want to have to look at the DTS file in the same way that you wouldn't want to have to look at the JS file. And this distinction sort of exists in a lot of languages. The further you go this way, I think the less like TypeScript they get. This is not really this is sort of a fuzzy table. I just put a bunch of stuff in here. But Python is pretty similar. You have a .py file. Then you have executable files, sometimes .pyc or .pyd. And then you sometimes have a .pyi file to have metadata in it. In particular, DTS are not exactly like .h files. They definitely, you cannot have actual code in them is the biggest difference. And so it's sort of a mistake to think of them as .h files. However, so actually one of the biggest reasons you want to think of DTS files this way is because real editing of DTS is going to be like manual editing of any compiled file. It'll be sort of tedious, error prone. It'll have a different style. It'll be full of compilerisms. The downside is we don't live in a TypeScript only world, and so there's lots of JS out there. And any JS you have without a DTS file really kind of needs a DTS file for TypeScript to best understand it. You can have TypeScript try to read the JS file, or you can try to generate DTS one time from JS and use that. But those are not guaranteed to work. So in TypeScript early days especially, there was a lot of JS out there with no DTS. So if you wanted to use those JS files, you needed to write the DTS files yourself, and that was a lot of DTS to generate. So definitely typed comes in here, and it lets the community do this massive task for you, where the definitely typed repo has types folder with a whole bunch of packages inside of it. 3 is the example I'm using here. It has a package JSON and index DTS that Microsoft publishes when you check it in to npm, and that those files are here inside of @typed/3 rather than 3. And when you install @typed/3, it sits side by side 3 inside of node modules. Let's zoom in on that. So this is not the ideal structure where you have a JS next to a DTS file inside of 3, but the compiler, when it doesn't find a DTS file here, knows to do a fallback and look for @typed/3. And if it finds an index DTS there, then it'll use that instead. And so you can easily simulate the ideal structure of a JS and a DTS being compiled next to each other and then shipped. But it's actually side by side, and the community gets to put whatever they want to in here, so that the original authors of 3 don't have to care about TypeScript if they don't want to.